15 through 35. It's in a section of Matthew's Gospel where there's talk of disagreements in the church and reproving another who sins. And it comes shortly after the quotation, or when Peter has said, Lord, if another member of the church sins against me, how often should I forgive? And then as many as 7 times, he says. And Jesus said to him, not 7 times, but I tell you, 77 times. And the parable is this. For this reason, the kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who wished to settle accounts with his slaves. When he began the reckoning, one who owed him 10,000 talents was brought to him, and as he could not pay, his lord ordered him to be sold, together with his wife and children and all his possessions, and payment to be made. So the slave fell on his knees before him, saying, have patience with me, and I will pay you everything. And out of pity for him, the lord of that slave released him and forgave him the debt. The size of that debt, is 1,000 talents, which would be like $100,000 or even more in today's currency. But that same slave, as he went out, came upon one of his fellow slaves who owed him 100 denarii, equivalent maybe to $20. And seizing him by the throat, he said, pay what you owe. Then his fellow slave fell down and pleaded with him, have patience with me and I will pay you. But he refused. Then he went and threw him into prison until he would pay the debt. When his fellow slaves saw what had happened, they were greatly in distress, and they went and reported to their lord all that had taken place. Then his lord summoned him and said to him, you wicked slave, I forgave you all that debt because you pleaded with me. Should you not have had mercy on your fellow slave as I have had mercy on you? And in his anger, his lord handed him over to be tortured until he would pay his entire debt. So my heavenly Father will also do to every one of you, if you do not forgive your brother or sister from your heart. The word of God for all the people.
Thanks be to God.
Let us join in singing. May God's grace and peace be with us now. Amen. Peter was thinking he was being pretty magnanimous when he said, how many times should I forgive somebody? 7 times? Because the rule that day was you forgive them once, twice, 3 times, and then 4 times you punish them. And Jesus says, not 7 times, 70 times 7. Or using, the figure, really unlimited forgiveness. And in the Lord's Prayer, we pray, Father, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive another. There's sort of 3 laws about forgiveness, if you will, in the scriptures. 1, you should forgive others like the way that you would like to be forgiven. That's the golden rule of forgiveness. Then, number 2, you will be forgiven the way you forgive others. As Jesus said, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And that's God's rule about forgiveness. And the third is the way that you should begin to forgive one another is the way that God has forgiven you. And that's the rule of grace. prayer to me on when it talks about forgiveness is like a boomerang. You know, you get what you throw out to another. Oh, boomerang! I used to have one as a kid. My brothers and I, we ducked after we threw them, hoping they wouldn't come back and hit us. You know, but you throw it out if you know how to throw it correctly. Boomerang goes around and comes back to you. And Jesus is saying that as we forgive one another, that'll come back to us. In either good ways or bad ways, if you will. And probably these sayings of Jesus on forgiveness are about as difficult as any part of the thing, the scriptures that we run into, because forgiveness is not easy. We are amazed when we read about the Mennonites forgiving someone who comes into their school and shoots up their kids, or the Amish. Or when we receive forgiveness from someone, we are sometimes amazed. I want to share a story that came into the life of a preacher a long time ago, Norman Vincent Peale. For a long time, he used to, his sermons were available in a little paperback, but it was more a little paper pamphlet, I should say. And it was more healing and prayers sometimes. Sometimes a sermon would be within them. But this I came across on another resource. And I think it captures this boomerang principle of forgiveness. He was preaching one Sunday up in New Jersey, and after the service, a young lady, very attractive, came up to him and said, "Dr. Peale, I have a problem I'd like to share with you and see if you can help me. I have an itch that will not go away. The itch gets worse whenever I go to church. And today, the itch was absolutely unbearable as I was listening to you preach." Now, Dr. Peale said, "I had had a lot of things happen when I preached, and a lot of people had said things, you know. But no one had ever complained that I made them itch." So he said, I asked her, and I said to this lady, I don't believe I've ever made anybody itch in my preaching. But she didn't laugh, and she didn't even smile. She said, "Listen, I'm very serious. I've gone to doctor after doctor, and no one can tell me what is wrong. And I was hoping you could help me." Now, he ran a clinic, or they did, with some pastoral care people at one point. That's probably why she thought that. But he thought immediately, then perhaps her itching has nothing to do with a physical problem. It may have to do with an emotional or relational problem. It may have to do with a spiritual cause, this itching. So he asked her, he said, "With your permission, would it be okay if I talk to your doctor, your family doctor?" And she said it would, and she had his telephone number and gave it to her. And he said, "Why don't you and I plan to meet in a couple days, and I will see, and we'll talk about what's happening, and I'll see if I can help." So he called the doctor, and the doctor said, and he asked if there was any physical reason why she would have this itching, and he said, "No, there doesn't seem to be any cause for the itching that I can tell. I really don't know. We're baffled. Because we've been somewhat treating this for about 4 years. She's come to us with this itching problem. And Dr. Peel asked the doctor, he said, is there anything else that was going on in her life that you know of? And is there anything that you would guess might be causing it? And they diagnosed it, this doctor did, he said it's not a neurosis or an obsession, but it's an inner mental eczema problem. And the doctor said, well, I've known the family for a long time. And I do know that she and her sister, a number of years ago, when after her dad had died, they got in quite a row over how the inheritance would be split. In a disagreement of opinion or opposite opinion led to some very sharp words until finally this woman said to the other one, I'm never going to talk to you again, and slammed the door and left the house. So Dr. Peel, with that information, called in the woman the next day, or for when their appointment was, and he said to her, can you tell me a little bit about when you started itching? She said, well, it was about 4 years ago. And did it have anything to do you think, when you and your sister had your falling out? And could you tell me a little bit about that? So she described what had happened in more detail than Dr. Peel. No. And he said, was there any relationship to that and when your itching started? And she thought back and she said, almost immediately, Dr. Peel, it started. It started almost the next day. And she said, and he said, well, he said, do you love Jesus? And she said, yes, I do. And he said, do you think Jesus ever hated anybody? No. Not that I don't think so, Dr. Peel. And do you believe that with Jesus' help, you can get over this itching? She said, I have faith that Jesus can do an awful lot. I don't know. But I hope so. And he said, then you do right now what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to lay out 3-4 things for you, and I want you to do them. Because I think it'll help. You tell God that you're sorry for your sin. And you ask God to take the hate away from you. She made her confession and did that. Then he said, now you tell God that you love your sister and that you forgive her for any way that she has wronged you. She hesitated a little bit here. And finally, she said, yes, I'll forgive. And then she burst out crying. And she said, my sister's a good person. I miss her. She's really a nice person. And I've been a fool. for these 4 years. So Dr. Peel said, now you tell Jesus right now that with your help, I now let my hate go, and I affirm my love for my sister and ask the Lord's forgiveness. She did this. And then he said, what's your sister's telephone number? And he said, why would you want that? And he said, I want your sister's telephone number. She hadn't called her sister for so long, she had to look it up. And she said, here it is. He said, okay. He dialed the number and gave her the phone. And she said, I can't talk to her. And Dr. Peel said, you are going to talk to her. She's going to answer the phone and you're going to talk to her. She hesitated. And when her sister came on, she simply said, Sister, I love you. Forgive me. Please. And with that, both sisters began to cry. And that healing took place. And before she left the office of Dr. Peel, she said to him, for the first time in 4 years, I don't itch. The boomerang principle. An example of 3 rules of forgiveness. We should forgive one another as we would want to be forgiven. The golden rule of forgiveness. We will be forgiven for the way that we forgive others. God's rule of forgiveness. The way you should forgive others is the way God has forgiven you. That's the grace rule. And that's what we worship. Is one who has grace for us. And it's a grace meal that we receive today. May we share our